What's up, everybody? Time for some more You Comment, We Respond. We're going to start with the final showdown. See, my voice is good, and also it's a song. You know the song I'm talking about? It's great. Yeah.
No, it's good.
At the Aussie Millions. The final showdown at the Aussie Millions.
Aussie
Millions. It was, in fact, the final hand of the Aussie Millions, in which the eventual winner, Sunday Vijayram.
I think it's Vijayram.
We don't know his first name. Vijayram opened the button with 2 5s and got called by King 8 of Spades by Heath in the big blind. And the flop was something of some kind.
Yeah, it was an open-ended straight draw for Heath and all overs for Vijayram.
Yes, it was a 6-7-9 flop, which went check, bet, call. We were interested in Vijayram's bet. We thought it was kind of odd.
Yeah.
The turn gave Vijayram a double gutter. It was a 3.
Yep.
It went check. Vijayram bet again,
Weird.
Which we thought was strange again. Heath raised, leaving himself a little bit less than a pot-sized shove on the river. Vijayram called, and the river came a queen of spades, and Heath went with it. He had to.
Yeah.
He moved all in, and Vijayram tanked forever before finding the biggest hero call of his life.
And it was correct, and so he is now the champion. Let's hear what the people had to say. A Rush Array says, it's quite unfair to claim he just closed his eyes and called, and frankly largely discredits him by doing so. This is Vijayram he's talking about.
Did we say that?
I think we sort of at the end were saying we weren't sure if it was actually a good call by him, but it worked out.
Okay.
He obviously put a lot of time into his decision and took all of the info he had into account. Sure, the gameplay is far from optimal, and his line taken against most players is definitely losing.
So
is that you're coming around on
who's
our
being
side.
Disrespectful to Vijayram? Is it this guy or is it us?
Wait, he's not done.
Okay.
However, this is live poker. Tells, no matter how overrated, are in fact real and can be critical to a decision. This call may seem spewy in theory, but when raised on the turn, he may have made his decision there that his opponent was bluffing and was prepared to consider calling the river.
I just gotta say,
go ahead.
I feel like this guy is taking one small thing we said and deciding that that was our whole premise, that we thought Vijayram played it spewy. I think maybe we said we weren't sure if it was a good call.
Yeah.
And I said something along the lines of, sometimes you just gotta close your eyes and call and hope you win the Aussie Millions. And I didn't mean it in a disparaging way.
I think I was slightly disparaging of it,
Okay.
actually, and saying, like, I don't know if this is such a good call, and I don't know that this is a winning call.
All right.
Right? So, fair enough.
Okay.
I think it's reasonable to say. I will say, like, I hear you, and it does seem to be that's what happened. And Vijayram did seem to have a reasonable read on the table.
He did.
And Heath, even. So, in that way, I'll give you credit. Maybe you're right here. At the same point, if we can agree it's not optimal and it's losing, now we're just down to tells. I don't know. I mean, there's got to be some pretty big tells. Vijayram tanked for a very long time on the river. We cut out most of it. So maybe he saw some things. He ultimately was right. I hope he saw some things. Otherwise, this, I think, is a bad play.
Right.
But if he saw some things, it explains more about what happened, and fair enough.
I mean, Heath is repping a pretty thin range when he moves in.
Yeah.
So the call makes a bit more sense to me than it does to Jonathan. The thing that didn't make sense to me was Vijayram betting both the flop and the turn.
Right.
I thought that was something I should disparage.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Leor says, while thinking about the hand from Vijayram's standpoint, I was mostly thinking about the check raise on the turn. If Ben were to bluff the hand, would he have done it on the flop? What is the best time to check raise in general? What does that have to do with their stack size? I like this. It's more of a general question.
Okay.
When is a good time to check raise?
Well, you can check raise pretty much anytime you want. That's the fun of check raising.
Sure, but if we think about it like flop versus turn versus river and stuff like that.
Okay, well, of course, balance is going to be a factor here, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to be balanced, especially against good players, if you're going to have a check raising, bluffing, and value range.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear that the further along you get in the hand, the more powerful the check raise looks.
Agreed.
River check raises look the strongest, turn the second strongest, flop the third strongest.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you get check raised on the flop, it's easy to believe someone's on a draw.
Right.
They're less likely to do it on the turn because they have less equity in the hand if they missed, right? And the river, there's no equity left, so now it's just a straight bluff, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's I think a good point. The later, and when people generally don't check raise bluff the river, which by the way is a good reason to do it against thinking players. But you can generally, as a thinking player, just fold when someone does that, almost always, because they're pretty much never bluffing.
Unless you've got some evidence otherwise.
Of course, yeah, there's some people who are absolutely going to be bluffing there, and that's different. But against normal, standard type players, I mean, we just don't think you're going to see it very often.
But the heart of the question is, what is the best time to check raise?
Right.
And there's no real answer to that. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and who you're playing against and what your history is with them. Just think about what it looks like to your opponent and how strong it looks based on what street it's on.
I kind of like this turn check raise by Heath as opposed to doing it on the flop, which feels slightly more transparent.
Yeah.
The turn feels stronger to me for all the reasons we talked about. He has less equity, so he'd be more likely, you would assume, to bluff on the flop rather than the turn, which makes it kind of cool. Next up, we have Phil Ivey takes Mike the Mouth to school.
And there's a little school bus on the thumbnail, which Jonathan made, and I appreciated the school bus. That's
Bam.
cool. Yeah.
So this is a hand where Mike opened with pocket kings. Phil Ivey was in the big blind with ace-4 off.
Suited.
Ace-4 suited, apparently. Nobody cares. Let's just get to the point. The flop was jack high with 2 clubs.
Jack 6-4.
Yep. Mike bet, Phil called with his bottom pair. The turn was a second jack, and it was the jack of clubs. It went check, check. The river was the 7 of clubs, I believe.
Not clubs, but the 7.
No, it absolutely was clubs. It made Mike the second nut flush.
It was clubs.
Thanks for sharing.
It was clubs.
I got this. So anyway, so Phil Ivey checked again. Mike bet very reasonably, like 40% of the pot. Phil, with no blockers or anything, check raised to about 50K.
He blocked 4 is full.
That is true. He blocked. Mike made about 14,000. Phil Ivey made it about, I think, 48,000 or something like that. And Mike found a fold after a while with the second nut flush.
And Phil Ivey took him to school.
Indeed, he did. It was a great hand. Let's hear what the folks have to say. Adam Gill says, I don't really understand why you think Phil Ivey can credibly rep a full house here. Let's say Ivey gets here with a full house. Isn't the 7 of clubs a great river card to bet? Mike would often have a hand he can't reasonably fold to a river bet, i.e. queen high flush, king high flush, ace high flush, even some lower flushes might call. And Mike is not going to bet this river with worse than a flush. Ultimately, by this logic, I think Phil Ivey wouldn't play a full house this way, and therefore Matisow should have been able to call. I want to take umbrage with one thing that's said, which is that Mike wouldn't bet a worse hand than a flush here. Actually, I think Mike would bet all his big misses here once Phil Ivey calls the flop and checks the turn, checks the river. This is a way to get out of it if we have a weird king high hand that has no clubs.
Right. So the thing that Jonathan is bringing up that is really important is allowing Mike to bluff some of the time.
Right.
That's important. And we said Phil Ivey wouldn't check raise the nut flush because he can't reasonably expect a worse hand to call, which is correct.
Yeah.
And it would seem that you wouldn't be able to get called when you have a full house either. But with a full house, you're not worried about better hands being there. So at least you have to try. And Mike has bluffs, so that's why you can do it. So that makes sense.
You also have to be able to threaten the nuts. So if you're going to check raise, you have to have the nuts in your range. You have to sometimes have the nuts. You have to have the full houses sometimes.
I mean, and it's Phil Ivey. Are we really saying Phil Ivey is so unbalanced that he only has bluffs here?
Right.
That seems crazy, right?
It does. It seems
That's
insane.
Phil Ivey.
It's Phil the freaking Ivey, man. Yeah. All right. Fun Diver 198 says.
That's a cool name.
Fun Diver.
Yeah.
Is that like, what are we diving into here? You like water or like skydiving?
We don't need to speculate.
We're diving into fun.
Yeah.
All right. If you are playing against someone as competent as Phil Ivey, maybe just check behind here and get to Showdown. You could be missing a lot of value, or a bit of value, but at least you don't value town yourself when he is trapping you with a better hand, and you also don't get outplayed like this.
We got a lot of comments like this, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people thought maybe Mike should be checking back. We think Phil has a lot of calls in his range here that Mike is beating. We think he needs to try to get value. The issue was he bet pretty small, and I think that was a mistake.
I mean, every club pretty much Phil has to call with. Maybe not every club.
No.
A bunch of clubs, though.
Some of the time he has to call with worse clubs. He just has to.
And as Mike, we could reasonably think Phil's going to bet the nut flush and at least sometimes bet full houses. We don't think we're going to get check raised very often. So I don't think we have to worry so much about that. It feels like it's much more important to try and get value out of the hands that are worse than ours that might decide to either hero us or just reasonably call us with like the 10 of clubs.
Right. Let's remember, the check raise did happen, and that makes it feel like it's going to happen no matter what.
Right.
But like we said earlier on this very show, check raises on the river are very rare.
Right.
Very, very rare.
And I don't think we have to worry too much about getting beaten by a better hand that check raises and gets some money out of us. I think so much more of the time, like Grant's saying, we're gonna bet it's gonna be a fold, or we're gonna bet it's gonna be a call, and we just gotta get value out of the calls.
Yeah. All right, the last hand we're gonna talk about was both really painful to watch and really fun to break down because it was kind of easy.
I mean,
to be honest, it was kind of a slam dunk easy breakdown. Jonathan believes it's the worst play he's ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. There's some definite candidates. We can talk about that later. Maybe we should. But for a second, first we're gonna recap the hand.
Right. Let's do that. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're 12 left in the main event.
Yeah.
It's an amazing spot. Aren't you happy you're Billy Kopp? You have 20 million. The blinds are 120K, 240K. It's amazing.
Six-handed.
Yeah, six-handed, 12 left. We're Billy Kopp. We decide to raise 3-5 of diamonds under the gun because, we're running over the table. It's
Whatever.
fine. Darvin Moon calls out of the small blind with queen jack of diamonds. Uh-oh. King 9 deuce flop, all diamonds.
Ruh-roh.
This is a problem for Kopp. He should probably lose 3 streets here, right?
Yeah.
It's going to suck. So it goes check, bet, call. Cool. The turn pairs the deuce. This is not a good card for either player.
No.
Because now full houses are out there. Darvin checks. We like that. Billy bets. He bets pretty big. He bets $2 million into $3.1 million. Darvin raises.
Yeah.
We didn't love that because Billy could easily have a full house here or they're not flush, so it's not a great spot. Billy goes all in with the 5 high flush.
So nut low flush.
To be fair, Darvin's not in a good spot here, although he apparently didn't know the board was
We'll
paired.
talk about that. We'll get to that.
We'll get into that later. He finds a call with the second nut flush. Billy Cobb's out of the tournament in 12th place.
Yeah.
So that's a big disaster.
Wow, what a big... He had over 80 blinds to start. He's one of the chip leaders. Just gone for no really good reason, honestly. Wow. Okay, so start with Eric Smythe, 14.
Smythe, that's the way to do it.
Want to make sure I say his name right. Billy Kopp should not have a bet 3 betting range on this board since he is in position on the river. Shoving the turn removes the river betting street, which is disadvantageous overall for him since he would have been in position. Whether he has a draw, a made hand, or something in between, a call plays better for his entire range since he can expect to over-realize his equity on a future street with closing action.
I 100% agree. This is actually something I brought up in the podcast, maybe not the video, that I thought Billy Cobb should have no move-ins on the turn.
Right.
Because if Darvin is somehow bluffing here, we want to allow him to keep bluffing on the river. And, I mean, just basic theory, we can't get called by a worse hand when we move in. That's another problem.
I mean, certainly not with
Not
the hand
with
we
Billy's
have.
hand, but also if Billy had the super nuts, if he had quads, maybe you could move in with quads because then you don't block anything. Maybe. But you're going to try to get value on the river anyway, so
Right.
I think this is a really good comment, and it makes sense.
Yeah, why not just let Darvin fire away just in case? Like, there's not that many cards we have to worry about that are going to scare Darvin off. Maybe a few, but not too many. So yeah, I think if we have kings full, also like we would call. Why would we move in?
Right.
There's basically a pot-sized bet left. It's going to be fine.
We're going to make sure a bet goes in on the river no matter what,
Right.
if Darvin checks. And if we're worried about not getting value from the ace of diamonds, why would we expect Darvin to have the ace of diamonds here, right?
I mean, it's very, very unlikely he's semi-bluffing. Check, raise, semi-bluffing the turn.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, it's not very often, especially a guy like Darvin.
Right. Great comment.
Great comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so Christian Crookeland said on the
Twitter?
YouTubes, nope,
YouTube?
the YouTubes, but thanks for playing. There you go again.
This guy.
He talked about an interview that Darvin Moon gave not too long after the hand.
Yeah.
To Poker News, I think it was.
He sent a link to the interview, actually. We saw the interview.
Did, yeah. I didn't see it. I just read about it, actually.
Okay.
But I read the quotes. So a few things really came to light in this, which are sort of shocking.
Amazing, in fact. Yeah.
First of all, Darvin Moon did not know the board was paired.
How? How can you not know the board is paired? This is the biggest moment of your life. What are you doing?
Darvin Moon corrected the Poker News reporter and said, no, it wasn't that the board was paired. He had a deuce in his hand, and that's why there were 2 deuces out there. And the Poker News reporter said, oh, so it was reported incorrectly, I guess. It was not.
No.
Darvin, my God.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that makes it better the way that Darvin played the hand, actually. If Darvin doesn't think the board is paired, it's better because so fewer hands beat you now.
Darvin also said a few other things which made me worry a little bit about his poker acumen and fairness.
You weren't worried already?
I was. One thing, he talked about it as if he said Billy had been raising his big blind a lot, right?
Darvin was in the small blind.
That is correct. I'm very aware of that. But Darvin seemed to think he was in the big blind, which is weird. Now, maybe it was a few hours later and he sort of just forgot and knew he was in a blind. Fair enough.
And he's all like, I'm sure he's messed up in the head. I mean, he's going to be a November 9er.
Right, he's already a November 9er.
He's never left Maryland before in his life. He's going to be a November 9er.
Right.
You know, so we can give him a little bit of a pass on some of this stuff.
The other thing he said, which was interesting, was so he thought he had the second nuts when Kopp moved in.
Yeah.
And he also said he could tell that Billy didn't have the ace of diamonds. Basically, he didn't have the flush, the nut flush. He didn't have him beat. And he's, at least in the interview, he comes off as very confident.
Right.
Like he's so sure. And yet he tanked for a little bit, didn't look super confident. It seems odd, and it doesn't seem to the story doesn't seem to fit what we actually see.
And why would you be so confident anyway? Even if he was confident.
I thought he had a tell, I mean.
I guess that he had a lower flush?
Yeah, or just not the nuts.
Okay.
I guess he thought, Billy Kopp isn't super strong here, because the nuts would be super strong. Maybe he thought he had that tell. But then why did he take a while to call?
I don't know.
Seems odd.
Yeah.
Although, honestly, in that spot, I'd probably take a while.
Not
even if I
realizing the board is paired is kind of bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This guy finished second.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, Danny Tucito.
Oh, you did a great job there.
Tucito. I'm sorry, Danny.
Tucciato?
No, Tucito. Something like that.
Tuccido.
His Twitter handle is IRDannyT. So let's go with that. He's the one who told us Darvin Moon didn't know the board was paired. I'm sorry, that was on Twitter. So you were right and I was wrong. Christian Crookeland said that Kopp talked about this hand also and claimed he was bluffing.
That's weird.
So we got to talk about that a little bit.
Kopp said he was bluffing.
Kopp claimed that he was trying to get Moon off a better flush.
This is a lie, right?
It has to
This
be
is just a lie. Like, why would you bluff with a hand that has no blockers?
Also, a hand that has very strong value.
Yeah. This is weird. Why are we turning this hand into a bluff?
Darvin Moon, by the way, very reasonably has nines full.
So we think Darvin Moon is raise folding a bigger flush on the turn for some reason.
Right. By the way, we don't think he's going to fold the nut flush, right?
No.
So what the heck, Billy Kopp? What is happening with these people?
I don't know. I think Billy Kopp is just trying to... He realizes after the hand happened that he couldn't get value from worse hands.
Right.
It was impossible, and he's smart enough to know that. And he came up with a story that made it sound a little bit better, which is, I was bluffing.
Yeah.
That's the only answer I have, because, come on, really? You're trying to get Darvin off a bit... It's Darvin Moon. Are you sure this guy's competent enough to fold a bigger flush? Like, what are you doing?
We have been famously wrong before when we claimed a player was not bluffing and they seem to have been bluffing.
Sure.
But I don't see how Billy Kopp could be bluffing here.
I mean, if he is, cool, I guess. I mean,
cool, you're out of the World Series.
Let's give him the credit and say that he actually is deciding to bluff. Is that a good idea?
I don't think so.
Why are we doing that?
I mean, we think Darvin is strong enough to check raise, but good enough to fold.
Yeah.
There are some players who are like that, but if I wouldn't do that. We think Darvin shouldn't even be check raising.
And why do we know he has a bigger flush? Why can't we put him on nines full, which he's never folding?
Right. By the way, quad deuces.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. But nines full makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So does the nut flush, by the way.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is not a bluff.
Ugh.